Okay, so tonight's actually okay. It's just an idea. It's not from anything. So it's tonight's Yom HaZikaron, which is Yom HaShoah, which is Holocaust Remembrance Day, and Israel they have commemorative events, and a siren is sounded at 10 a.m. tomorrow morning for 1 minute throughout the country, and everyone stops in their tracks, and it ties in also with the Sphira. That was one of the dark days in Jewish history. And what I mentioned the other day about the Omer being a somber period was that the Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva never respected each other. And just a thought, we recently I've been tested with certain people to my patience has been tested. I know Damon understands what I'm saying. And sometimes you've got to give people the benefit of the doubt, because if you react or snap too quickly, it goes against your interest. And I held back, and certain things, just by being patient, worked out in my favor instead of causing a whole confrontation and issue with people. So, also, yeah, just in life, just try to treat people nicely and decently. It's not easy. Just, yeah, and don't throw your toys at someone because we mustn't throw our toys at someone because we've had a bad day at the office, so to speak. So just treat people decently and nicely. It's not it sounds more difficult than it is for some people. So, but
No, for me, it's my
just wanted to
biggest
say
challenge.
that. Oh, is it?
My biggest challenge in life is not getting frustrated with people and losing my temper because I snap like a twig. I'm terrible.
Oh, serious? I
But,
didn't think
I've,
so.
I've improved over the years. Well, you haven't tested me yet, have you? You'll see one day. It takes a
Okay.
while. No, but sometimes the smallest thing,
Yeah.
if I've had a hard day, I had a recent experience like that, which I shouldn't have reacted that way, but I did. I'd gone back to a place twice, and the person wasn't there when they said they would be, and I just started, you know, just I was so
Yeah.
frustrated, but I shouldn't have. I should have kept calm and gone back a third time. Eventually, they got hold of me, but I was so angry by that time. You know. Anyway, I sorted it out.
Well,
It's
I'll
God's
talk.
thing with me. He
Yeah.
tests me.
I'll talk for Damon and myself. Both of us battle to lose our temper. We have to force it.
You're right.
It's a daily
James
struggle.
50, you are just the
He's
hardest
very
guy to lose your
flattered.
temper. I promise you.
I know.
By the way, how's that telephone?
All right, moving right along.
Damon, can I just make one quick comment? Gavin,
Sure.
you can see by my background, I don't put plain photos as my background. I don't have
Yeah,
plain backgrounds, eh?
correct.
I
You
think I
get the
need to
joke.
get a bin. I'm
Yes.
going to be sick.
We'll have a plain background. It's called the sky.
No, mine is
Guys,
in an aircraft. That's
we're
why I
running
said
out
it's
of
not a
time.
plain
I'm
background.
Okay, we
actually
Okay.
worked it.
testing my patience right now. All right. Let me share the screen because we've got a heck of a lot to go through. But Kevin, well done on maintaining your composure because I must tell you something, Kevin. When I've met some of the mentor friends he's got in Israel, he's extremely patient. You are, Kevin.
I'll tell you a story. Yeah, recently and 2 days ago, someone stayed at me, but Jesus, but anyway, I kept my cool. But thankfully, yeah.
Yeah, but you tolerate
Okay.
a lot. I've met some of
Yeah,
your
I know.
Vic,
The question is, Kevin, where do you hide the bodies?
all right, guys, let's get started. So let me just quickly give you the default position. Is that most of you got the general concept, and this concept is that as long as you have two witnesses, it's not the amount of witnesses that are impressive. The impressive part is that um, there's two different sort of distinct metrics. The one is if you want to invalidate testimony, is that generally there's a credibility factor that three are believed more than two, providing all the information can be worked out because majority does rule. However, if the two witnesses are as credible as the three, numbers don't count. The second aspect is as far as the Adem Zomimim, where a timeline-wise, a second set of witnesses come and testify that the first set were with them somewhere else. That holds true even if you've only got two witnesses and they're testifying against a larger group. because we learned from Moshe at Har Sinai, the second group, and in terms of a timeline, is believed, providing their testimony that the first set were with them somewhere else at the time and place that they said the murder took place in a different area. They have to corroborate it with some form of evidence. They're not automatically believed, but if it's two against the first set, which happened to be a greater number, even the two are believed. But it's also checked out for the simple reason is otherwise two Adams or two Zomimim are going to be made to be conspiring when in fact they're not. So that's your first point. Then we have this case of, well, how do we know that? So there are two sources. There's Deuteronomy chapter 17, verse 6, and there's Deuteronomy chapter 19, verse 15, and they both have the starting statement of saying, by the testimony of two witnesses or three witnesses shall the one who deserves to die be put to death. That's in Devarim chapter 17, verse 16. And in chapter 19, verse 15, it says, by the testimony of two witnesses, three witnesses shall the matter be established. So the exact same wording is a superfluous mention of the word witnesses twice. What do we mean? You could say by the testimony of two or three witnesses, but the very fact that it says the testimony of two witnesses, and then it reiterates the statement with a word witnesses again, all three witnesses, lets you know that this pluralization of the word witnesses does count. And what that is coming to establish is that as long as you've got two or more, the specific number is not the impressive factor necessarily. By logic, you would think that the more witnesses, the better, but it's not necessarily the case. It has to be based on reputable logic and evidence. And now my screen has just disappeared to another daf for some unknown reason. I'm not quite sure what happened. Sorry, guys, hang on a sec. When I've got this Makkos folder, it seems to, as soon as I move my mouse, go to a myriad of Mishnayos. Give me one sec. I'm just going to share the screen again. And then I just want to bring the point with the different opinions. Okay, and then the quicker we can get to the Gemara, the better. Okay, so there's this issue. The first issue that's brought up is by Rabbi Shimon, who said you can draw more conclusions from the analogy of two or three. So what is his point? Is he saying just as two witnesses are not executed unless both are established as Zomimim? And where do we find this? We find this with, if you remember the previous daf, on the fifth daf, we're already into the sixth daf, mentions a particular case of just 5b5. Just give me 1 second, I'll tell you now. Where we learned that there was Rav Yehuda ben Tabai, who, what did he do? There were one was an Eid Zomim, one was a conspiring witness, and one was not, and therefore he executed the conspiring witness. And you can't execute the conspiring witness unless both are found to be guilty in this particular case. So once we learn that principle, we now have the same principle that every one of the Zomimim every one of the Eidim have to be established as Zomimim in order to apply the reciprocal death penalty. Okay. However, the case can be dismissed on the basis of one conspiring witness. Let's just see if Brendan's joined. Brendan?
Hey guys,
Hi. All right.
my apologies. I was
No
just
problem.
too dirty.
Let's not delay further. So, Brendan, all we said is that
Okay.
it has nothing to do with the amount of witnesses that adds to the credibility. You have to have at least two, and that's the main issue. And the secondary issue is the second set of witnesses establishing the first set as conspiring because they were testifying they were with him at another location at that time. They said to have witnessed the criminal event, or the monetary damage, etc. It's the time basis that affects, not the amount of witnesses necessarily. So if the second group are testifying against a larger group, that does suffice. Let me share where we were. Okay, I feel like there's been a few distractions. Sorry, Brennan, we just want to get straight into it. So Rabbi Shimon, this is what you missed. If you look at the Mishnah, there's a specific principle with Rav Yehuda ben Tabai. We learned that as we finished the 5th daf and we into the 6th daf, where he said that there were 2 witnesses. One was found to be not at the event at the correct time, and he was placed somewhere else by a second group of witnesses. And Rav Yehuda ben Tabai convicted him to death for being an Eid Zomim, which in fact you cannot do unless both of them are found to be Eidim Zomim. You can dismiss the case, however. And then since that's the case, you remember he learned that from whom? Well, he learned that from the fact that at the end of the day, he could never render a legal decision except in the presence of Shimon ben Shattach, who was his teacher, so that he would never come to make this mistake again. And he prostrated himself before the grave of the false witness to say that he should have dealt more leniently with him. It's not that it was an innocent person, but you can't give the death penalty to one unless all of them are established as Eidim Zomimim, but the case can be dismissed in order to exonerate the defendant. All right, so on that principle, Brendan, Rav Shimon says that there is this principle that just when we've learned up until now in the Gemara in the 5th daf that there's only 2 sets of witnesses as a stock standard rule. Unless both of them are established as conspiring witnesses, we cannot give them the death penalty. And the death penalty is only given after the defendant is sentenced, but the verdict hasn't been carried out. But it also has to be that they're both established as conspiring witnesses. And it's saying here the same thing, Rabbi Shimon. 3 witnesses are not executed unless all 3 are established as Zomimim. If only 2 of the 3 are rendered Zomimim, the testimony of the entire set is discredited and the victim is let off the hook, but they're not punished with the reciprocal punishment. And we want to know where from the Chumash, just guys, give me a second, where from the Chumash do we know that this holds true even for 100? In other words, if there are 100 witnesses that testify to something, if 99 of them were convicted of being Eidim Zomimim and the 100th was not, and he was in the right location at the right time, none of them can be punished. And we know this by the plurality of the word witnesses, which means all of them are seen as one group, not part thereof. So before we deal with Rabbi Akiva, does everybody understand it? Any questions, guys?
Good.
Lance, any questions? We'll discuss the 2 brothers thing. You were in the middle of a thing. I did send you the audio, but we're not there yet.
Damon,
Yeah?
can I also ask you something? So just to clarify, so all the Zomimim have to be, all of them, all 3 have to be Eidim Zomimim. If only one of them is, then the case is not, then they don't get the reciprocal punishment. Is that, do I understand you correctly?
There's not really, well, the Chiddush isn't with one. Let me tell you why. Kevin's asking a good point. Is because on the basis of one person, can the defendant be executed, guys?
No.
Then why should he alone be given the reciprocal death penalty if there's only 2? Because his testimony alone, even if he's a conspiring witness, would not be enough to convict the defendant. That's the logical conclusion we've come to up until now. That's why Kevin's question is so good. Now it's thrown off track because you learn about Rabbi Shimon, and we're saying, but there's a problem here. There are 3 witnesses. So surely if 2 of them are Eidim Zomimim and a 3rd one isn't, those 2 would be enough to convict the defendant, even if the 3rd one wasn't exonerated, and therefore they should be entitled to get the death penalty because the two of them were enough to convict the defendant. Do you see why it's such a unique, novel idea that Rabbi Shimon is bringing? Exactly as Kevin's point is. Guys, feedback?
Yeah, that's why it's actually risky to put more than two in a set.
No, well, it's great if you don't want if you're a plotting witness and you've got the more the
Yes,
merrier.
if you're
The
plotting.
first thing that you should do is find somebody that's been at that shopping center at that exact time to get you off the hook. But that's just my devious mind. Are you with me? But do you understand the principle, guys? It's fairly straightforward. So that's what's such a unique concept, because the two witnesses were enough to convict the defendant. The third one should not be the mitigating factor that they don't get the reciprocal penalty. And yet, Rabbi Shimon is coming from this point. Why? Because just as we don't want to ensure that a person that was actually murdered another person and there were witnesses, but he didn't get a warning, he doesn't get the death penalty by the Sanhedrin. So too, we're looking ways to exonerate the Eidim Zomimim if possible, because the Sanhedrin's job is to save a life or lives. Do you get where Rabbi Shimon's coming from? Yes, guys. Any questions, or can we go on? Can we go into Rabbi Akiva? Yay, nay? All right.
Yes.
Yay.
Okay, thanks, guys. All right, so now Rabbi Akiva said the third witness is not mentioned so that we should deal, in fact, more leniently with him, but that we should deal more stringently with him, and makes the third witness sentence the same as theirs. So Rabbi Akiva is bringing this point that Kevin exactly asked, because you could rule on the strength of the two witnesses alone so that the third witness was not needed. And therefore the two can get the reciprocal penalty because two people are enough to convict the defendant. But just as in a particular case where you see Rabbi Shimon is saying unless they're all guilty, they don't get the reciprocal penalty. Rabbi Akiva is mentioning a different point, is that if all three are guilty, we don't exonerate the third witness. He's making a different point, because you don't need the third witness to convict the defendant. He's making a different point to Rabbi Shimon. Okay, Lance, give me the two different points of Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Akiva.
I just want to check something. There are three conspiring witnesses. Do all three get their sentence?
Absolutely, according to Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shimon, absolutely. But why does Rabbi Akiva say that that's in a way surprising?
Because you only need two to convict, but then how would you decide which one to let go?
Well, we're saying it's an excellent question. We're saying in a case where a third one joined, maybe later in terms of the testimony, in the sense that not later, but maybe testified last or whatever. But initially there were going to be two, and the court said, listen, before we admit the witnesses, there's a third one joining the group of two, because he witnessed it at the same time. They were all together. We just couldn't find him, or whatever case may be. So when we say the third witness, the bottom line of it is whoever is considered the third, maybe their statement is the third in the sequence in terms of testimony within the court proceedings. It doesn't mean that he had to have only arrived later, because then he's not part of the two as far as the group's concerned. Because then, in other words, if he came as a third witness in a second group, he's not a third witness. He's the first witness of a second group. So it means his statement was third in the court proceedings. So, Lance, it's a good question. But what Rabbi Akiva
Basically,
is saying,
you'll get off. So you'll get off then, because he isn't part of the witnesses. He is like an extra third wheel.
so he would only get off if he was part of the second group and they never saw him, and he never saw them, because then he's tried. Then he can't convict himself, because that second group needs a minimum of two. So
Okay.
the third witness in this case can only be proved as being part of that first group, but having testified last in the court appearance. So, Lance, you made a good distinction. But Rabbi Akiva is saying the logic would be that we should deal more leniently with him, you would think, but it's not. We deal more stringently. Give me a second. Sorry, guys. So what Rabbi Akiva is saying is that I'm not coming to make sure that we deal leniently with the third person. His sentence should be exactly the same as the other two, even though he was the third one to testify within that same first group. Why? Because you would think that the third person gets off because his testimony is not needed. But if he's prepared to be part of a group of wicked people, and he is in fact a conspiring witness, just as Hashem rewards a person that adds to a group performing a mitzvah, so too Hashem uh, uh, adds to a group of transgressors, that even though he's considered almost an accomplice, that you don't need his testimony to convict, and the first two testimonies would have sufficed to have convicted the defendant, we nevertheless give him the same punishment. Why? Because what happens if, guys, just by logic, the first was made to be because you could say that Rabbi Akiva is agreeing with Rabbi Shimon. Say the first witness was not it was not an Adam Zomamim. It's not a conspiring witness. Then you can technically convict on the other two, but we don't. It's thrown out of court, and the defendants do not get the reciprocal penalty unless they're all made to they're all found out to be Adam Zomamim. But in the fact of it is, even though the third person is not necessary, the minute he joins the group, his third testimony, even though it wasn't necessary, he deserves to get the punishment. Is everybody clear on that? Any questions on that?
Yeah, it's just the wording, because he says that it's more stringent. It just sounds like it's the same, not it's the same as the others. It's not.
No. So important distinction. He's bringing up a different point. He said, listen, you would think that you could deal more leniently with the person that gave the third testimony because you didn't need him to convict the defendant. But since he shares in the sin, he's entitled. He was quite happy if this defendant met his death. He deserves to be punished the same as theirs. Now, Rabbi Shimon before has got a different point. His point is one of.
I understand that, Damon. That's exactly what I just said. What you said is what I said.
Okay, I'm just sitting on the same page. Sometimes we don't.
No, I'm on exactly the same page. It's not more stringent. It's not more lenient. Correct. He's saying it's not more lenient. I'm saying the same thing. It's not more lenient, but it's not more stringent either. It's identical punishment to what the other two are getting.
Yeah, except that Rabbi Shimon was talking about a case of how to get them off if one of them was not established as a Zomaim in the group. And Rabbi Akiva is saying, listen, you want to look at just generally a lenient point of view, that if one is innocent and the rest are convicted, even if it's 99 or Adam Zomamim and one's innocent, the whole group gets off. I want to actually focus on the stringency now, that the third one isn't needed to convict the defendant, but if he joins that group, and that entire group are Adam Zomamim, he gets a death penalty even if his testimony was not needed. So they're actually in agreement, Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shimon. They're just emphasizing different points.
No.
Contradictory to another, exactly as you said, Gavin.
No.
But they are bringing completely different points, as you rightly understand. Okay. Right, let's just get on to the rest of Rabbi Akiva's statement. And he said, and just as two witnesses, if one of them was found to be a relative to one of the parties to the dispute or disqualified to serve as a witness. Now, it mentions this in, Gavin, you didn't start the beginning of Sanhedrin with Rav Simcha's group, but in the 24th daf and the 27th daf, it actually made this point about how certain professions and sins could disqualify a witness from testimony. Okay, and one of those reasons is because if he's got a career as a gambler, he might owe a lot of money, and it might be in his interest to have somebody killed, or he might have betting odds, or have some sort of financial gain if a monetary case ends up pear-shaped, etc. You can't trust somebody that has a career of gambling. Why? Because for a gambler, in order for one person to win, the other one has to
Lose.
Exactly. In
Uh,
any other profession, that's what's so despicable. You have a win-win situation. And that win-win
So,
situation is, listen, you buying goods or services, I earn the money, and you are now in an enhanced position because of the goods or services you bought. They are both winners. In gambling, in order for me to win, you have to lose. And that's why it's such a despicable
Yeah, and
sort of problem.
and Damon, so you don't want to be at odds with a person who's a compulsive gambler.
Very good, Kevin.
You want to be at even, but not with him, with somebody else. All right, I tried to spin it, but it didn't work. All right, sorry.
No, it did. It did. So the thing
look at the relay
there's another disqualification, guys, and that disqualification has to do with what? Well, that disqualification has to do with relatives. Why, Kev?
Are you talking about a gambler? Because a gambler does everything by chance and not M1R. Is that so? You're still talking about the gambler?
No. We're not getting as Kabbalistic as that.
Oh, the relatives have got a vested interest and they might be biased
Yes,
and
in other words, there's certain people that are not allowed to testify. In Sanhedrin 24 and Sanhedrin 27 in the Gemara, it mentions that certain careers, if a guy's got a career as a gambler, as a professional gambler, I'm not saying somebody that goes to the old spiel or whatever when they go on holiday or whatever, but somebody that's a professional gambler, you can't trust their integrity or that they don't have a vested outcome in the court case. And anybody that's found to be a sinner is not reputable enough to be a witness. So, depending on one's questionable career choice or their character, they can be dismissed as a witness. And what's also known as a disqualified witness is a relative. And what we said yesterday is in normal, healthy families, your relative will be there to defend you. So they're biased in order to make sure that they care about you and you get off the hook. So you can't trust them as a witness. They want to see you succeed. Some people come from dysfunctional families where their relative wants them to crash and burn. And therefore relatives can be punitive and are also not unbiased because maybe they just like this relative and they say, oh, you don't know him like I do. He's really not such a good guy. And this is a testimony and this is what I've seen. Or they don't have to even say it. Sometimes they can hide their prejudice, but just say, no, I saw him commit this particular event, etc. So a relative can either be pro or con, but certainly not unbiased. Anybody that's got a close relationship is biased to the legal case. And that's why you have this process, even though jury selection is ridiculous, because the American-based system works on a jury. Now, how can you have such a stupid system where people that are not well versed in the law can be emotionally swayed to either convict or exonerate somebody? That is the most stupid concept ever. The reason that concept came about is because many times throughout history, you had one judge determining the fate of an individual, and if that judge took a disliking to you, that was also unfair. It needs to be judged amongst your peers, as they say. You've got a better chance of defense because there are more people to judge you and not one person that has it in for you. Okay? The problem with that is that person is not an expert in the law. So therefore, you have what you call jury duty, where they test the bias of the jury about how they feel on certain issues. But that person, at best, is not biased, and at worst, is ignorant of the law. So that's a terrible system, the jury system. What we have is we have at least 3 judges on a monetary case and 23 judges on a capital case. So that is equivalent of a jury, but those that know the law. and their entire job is to try and get the defendant off as opposed to convict him on a capital case. Okay.
Do you need to be Shomrei Shabbos to be a reliable witness as well? Or is that too
Yes,
strict?
well, there's a whole lot of halachic criteria, and one of them is you have to be Shomrei mitzvahs. Yes, absolutely. If you're having relationships that are forbidden or conducting in halachically forbidden activities, including breaking Shabbos and eating treif, you're going to be disqualified as a witness because you don't hold by the moral system that you adhere to, and therefore you can't be trusted to believe that that system is just and fair. Okay, so let's just go back to what Rabbi Akiva is saying. He's saying here something different, is if one of them was found to be a relative or disqualified witness, so there are two qualified witnesses left to establish the testimony, their testimony is invalid. Now this is not only for Eidim Zomamim, it's for normal Eidim. In other words, what we're saying is as follows. If you've got three witnesses that testified to a murder, okay? We're not talking about here Eidim Zomamim now. We can talk about Eidim Zomamim or normal witness testimony. Is that basically, especially in a capital case, if a third witness is invalidated either because they're biased, because they're a relative, or disqualified because they're a sinner or their career is questionable, the entire group's testimony is invalid. Even if you've got two qualified witnesses left to establish the testimony, and only one was invalidated. Okay, so in other words, the two qualified witnesses are disqualified by the invalidation of the third member of the group. So it says, where in Chumash do we hold that this is true even for 100 witnesses? And the Torah, we know from the statement in Devarim that it uses this plurality of the word witnesses, which says the testimony of the remaining 99 legitimate witnesses is also invalidated. And this could be in a case where they're testifying against their defendant. They're not necessarily the Eidim Zomamim at all. It could be just legitimate witnesses that are invalidated because of their status. So it could apply to Eidim Zomamim, but then if they're disqualified as a witness, they don't get the reciprocal penalty anyway because they were disqualified based on either bias or their career choice or being a habitual sinner, but not necessarily that they were caught lying about having testified to a crime they did not see being committed. So it's about witnesses in general. Does everybody understand that before we go on? We got 5 minutes, 4.5 minutes left. All right, let's go on quickly. Rabbi Yose said regarding what is this? That even if one of the three, of even three or more witnesses are disqualified, the testimony of the entire group is invalidated. And he doesn't agree. Because what does he say? Regarding capital cases, he agrees. Because they want to get the defendant off the hook. So one person in the entire group that's invalidated as a witness for a murderer, they want to get the murderer off. So in that particular case, they're much more stringent in order to protect a defendant in a capital case. But regarding monetary cases, according to Rav Yose, the one witness does not invalidate the testimony of the remaining witnesses, because as long as you've got two legitimate witnesses to testify in a monetary case, if one's disqualified, it's still valid. Very straightforward. Now, Rabbi, who's Rabbi? It's Rav Yehuda Hanasi, who redacted the Mishnah and the Gemara. So that's why they say Rabbi. It's Rav Yehuda Hanasi, just by the way. I didn't know. I had to look this up because I thought rabbi. Everybody's a rabbi. So it refers to Rav Yehuda Hanasi. Okay? Now, whether in monetary cases or capital cases, he holds, by the way, the halacha goes according to him, hey? Not Rav Yose. Not Rabbi Akiva even, but Rav Yehuda Hanasi. So whether in monetary cases or capital cases, disqualification of a single witness invalidates the testimony of the entire group. So he's saying it's in both, but under what circumstances? Only if in a capital case is using an example, if the witnesses warned him immediately prior to the crime. By joining in this warning, the disqualified witness demonstrates that he's not merely a spectator, but a participating witness. So his disqualification therefore invalidates the testimony of all the other witnesses at all. So in a capital case, you need hazra, you need warning about saying this act is prohibited and this results in a death penalty. According to some opinions, it's more specific. This case is prohibited here in the Chumash, and this is the particular death penalty. There are two different opinions as far as how detailed it has to go. But if he's just witnessing, that's in a capital case. So what do we do in terms of a monetary case? What's our answer to Rabbi Yehuda? It doesn't mention this in the Mishnah. But I looked this up. It said in the case of a Mishnah, sorry, not a Mishnah, a monetary case, what they do is they say to the witness, what's your intention to merely see it, or did you merely see it, or did you want to be an active participant in testifying? Because there's no warning required in monetary cases. Do you get what I'm saying? Well, how do you know? Guy backs into somebody else's car. How are you going to end up having mental telepathy now that the idiot put the car in reverse instead of in first gear? You don't know. You see it. So what happens in monetary damages cases? They ask you, did you just see it, or are you intending to bother coming to the court case and using a lot of your valuable time? If he's not merely a spectator, but a participating witness, if he's then invalidated because they find out afterwards he's a sinner, whatever the case may be, or some other invalidation, the entire group is disqualified on that basis. Okay. All right, we've got 1 minute left. This must be so. Otherwise, what should two brothers do who saw someone commit a murder? If no distinction is drawn on the basis of a warning, a murderer who killed in the presence of two brothers would go free no matter how many other witnesses there were, since one brother who's disqualified will invalidate the testimony of the remaining witnesses. According to Rav Yehuda Anasi, however, as long as one of the brothers does not participate in the capital case and actually warning the murderer, the testimony of the other witness remains valid. So what we are saying is here, this is not a relationship between one of the principals and his relative testifying for and against. It's about two witnesses that are related as brothers. Okay, we covered a lot of ground today. I hope it was a handy share.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right, guys. Sorry, there was a lot to cover. Lance, you can